Okay, guys, as promised, some information about the grading for weekly assignment 3 through 5, and then your final information on your final project. I'll say two things up front. One, there will not be written instructions for your final project, and I will put this information in the text when I send out this screencast. But you need to save this and refer back to this for your instructions for the final project. I will give you instructions on this spreadsheet as well as send this out to you with the screencast attached. This is in fact what you need for your instructions, to use for your instructions. I'll send out a short screencast next week about your reading journals that you'll be doing for the next 3 weeks, but it's important to get the book. Then, yeah, obviously to read that book, but I'll talk more about that next week. As far as for this week, it should be pretty easy. You have your chapter takeaway assignment due and your third FEMA exercise. And then I give you a week off. Woohoo! So without further ado, here are the instructions, but I'm going to go on to this little spreadsheet I made for this. So you had 3 parts, and each part was worth 6 points. So how did I grade these? You basically got 3 points for filling out the chart, and your responses were 1.5 points each for a total of 3 points because you had to do times 2. So let me just put that in there. Times 2, which equals the 6 points. Oh, sorry, times 2, 3 points. Okay, so and break this down a little further. For your first chart, really to get the 3 points here, you simply had to fill out the information and offer justification. Now, if you gave me 2 hazards instead of 6, then it was a little bit more questionable, but in general, if you attempted this and attempted it in good faith, then you got the 3 full points here. Second chart, the key, you guys, was revision. You were hopefully, unless you were in the, I believe, Portland group, which only had 2 or 3 people, they might have a little bit more tougher time. But the fact that you had classmates to compare it to, your information should have changed in almost all regard. Your information should have changed. If they didn't offer information as far as how to help you in their actual comments, then simply the information that they gave you should have given you food for some thought. So the key here was revision. Did your information change at all? And then the third part, the third chart down here, also the key is revision. Your information, and even if you didn't change based on your group's revisions, you should have changed because doing the next part of your chart and having to fill out the information for the different parts, your information should have changed because you should have learned more. And whenever we learn more, especially in something like risk assessment, we then change our information based on the new information that we learned. And so a key part of all of these was that you were revising your work based on the new information you have, which is just a key in any risk assessment, any emergency management assessment technique, is that you will always be revising based on new information. And if you're not getting new information, then you're not learning. So that is how you got the 3 points for each one of the charts. Now your responses. These were needed work, and they needed work in so much as, saying excellent work, or, and first of all, I guess I should mention, and many of you called on to this, and I think only a couple of you had issues, but you had to do it. You were on a team. I put you guys on a team, so you should only be commenting on those in your team, and obviously for good reason, because you and your team were studying the same city and supposed to offer each other help. So if both of your responses didn't hit all of these questions that I asked, and these are straight from the instructions, then you weren't getting your 1.5 points each. The purpose of the team is for you to help your other teammates get better and offer good advice, and specific advice. Not, hey, you did a good job, I seem to have more hazards than you. That's not specific. That's not really helpful. So it had to be helpful, useful, thoughtful. All those things, which is no surprise that that's what I want out of you guys. So now, before going into so that's essentially how it was graded. I offer here, I'm going to have phone office hours, and I'm going to have these on Tuesday, the 23rd, from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., and there is my phone number. So, call me during that time. We can talk about anything related to this course, anything related to your grading on these assignments, anything related to the final project that I will talk about next. But call me during that time. Let me just mentally say, so for me, that is 12 to 1. Yes, that's in my calendar, 12 to 1. So anytime. And if I do not answer and you leave a message, I will call you back. So, I don't know how many people will call or use this opportunity, but if you don't get me, and because I'm on the other line, I will call you back. And if I don't call you back by 11, which would be rare, I will call everyone back before I leave for that day. So again, I will chat with you either between 9 and 11 or after I'm done talking to folks. So hopefully some of you guys will make use of that. If you have any questions about anything related to this course, I can chat with you on Tuesday. Okay, so let's go with the final project. So what is the final project? Can't remember which one I put these on. Okay, so here is the template that I will be assigning here. And you can see up here, the file will be last name, the city name, _ final project. You will fill in the city name here. And then what is all this? So this should look pretty similar to you. This is basically your chart with a couple of exceptions. So what are those exceptions? So let me go here, because this is what you will have a blank, but I filled in a little bit as for an example. So with this one, we are looking at Denver. So one of the first things that you need to do, and what you will send to me, is you will send me this entire workbook. And the workbook will have all of your teammates' names and information. So I put here Stephanie. So Stephanie was the first one that had Denver. And the first thing we see here is Stephanie's final chart. And I also wanted to go over how to copy and paste this final chart in case people had issues. So briefly, I'm going to go over this. So essentially, you need to go into Blackboard and you need to put in you need to go in here and you need to click this button and you go up here and that highlights everything. So I'm going to unclick it. Oh man, sorry. Okay, there we go. Unclick it. I'm going to click it again. It's this little arrow up here. I'm going to edit. I'm going to copy. I'm going to click this new tab. And I'm going to hit paste. Okay, so I just did that. So then I would go down here and I would double click. And then I would put in Stephanie. And that's, I want the first person to put me and then Denver. Now for each person in your group, you would then add a chart and do the same thing. So here, some of the folks that had Denver as well as Stephanie were Melanie, Christian, this is fictitious Joe. So I would want all the sheets of those people in your group. Now, why do I want that? Okay, so if we look here, this is Denver. So again, I only put 3 people's, but the total risk here is 9%. Now, this should be somewhat problematic because these should, if well researched, these should be pretty much the same, especially the individuals' events, scoring them. So let's look at Melanie. She has a total risk of 23%. Christian had a total risk of 17%. Okay, 17 and 23 are closer together, but then what are the top 2 risks? And were they the same within groups? So this is what I want in your final template. And I highlighted these 2 from Stephanie because she has her highest 2 percentages as 83 and 72, which means that she's saying that for Denver, the highest, not only the highest risk, but the highest probability of impact and preparedness is hail and high wind. So in your template, you would take the top 2 from each member in your group. So let's go over here to the final submission example. So I put for Stephanie, hail, high wind. So essentially you just copy the top 2. So just be careful about the cells that you copy, but you should be able to go in here. Let's go back to Stephanie. You start here, you drag it all the way over, so you highlight these 2 and make sure that your first row is here. So I'm telling you this methodically like this because this is a key point as to not lose your formatting in your cells. So then you hit copy, but when you go over to paste here, you can paste it, just highlight the first cell or do the entire one, but let's just do the first one actually. So start like that. Go to the first cell that you copied, edit, paste special. So paste special so your everything doesn't get all messed up. Paste special and just do the values. So that means it won't take anything else but the values. Click on that, hit OK. And that's what you get here. And you might want to go in and mess with, like, if things are centered. But that is how you don't get wonky numbers, and this stays in decimals and all of that stuff. You will actually need to copy all of that over. So, but it should work out with if you do it like that. So anyway, okay, so we did Stephanie's. So why do I want you to do this? I want you to do this because theoretically, and Bob, Billy, and Bunny, but theoretically, I want you guys, not theoretically, but in doing so, people on the same team, you guys should have had close to these risk percentages. As a team doing this, providing the information, the right sources, you should have had numbers close to each other. And if you don't, I want you to tell me why. So, again, for each member in your group, take their top 2 hazards. So you see for Melanie here, her top 2 hazards, her first one was floods, which is very different from what Stephanie had. But it was at 94% here, so I copied that one over. And then you see down here, which you guys might run into, so she was fine here, so I took the droughts, which is 89%. Hopefully I did both of those. Yes, we have flood droughts. Put that over here. And then also, yeah, you have to go back, because this won't compute, because we're not, the total risk score, we're not copying straight over. But you see here, take that number, and then Melanie's number, top risk score, 23. We put it in the final chart. And lastly, I did this for Joe. And then top 2, and then we put that here. So, first step here is the first thing I want you guys to do when you're doing this chart. You'll have everybody's information. I want you to come up with what your final answer is. What do you believe now, even if you had originally, and these are all original numbers, you guys. I want everything that from you and your teammates. And then, so what now do you think would be your top event and your next event and all of these numbers? Okay, so that is going to be the first part. And then down here, I'm going to have, let's insert a text box. This is what I didn't do. I didn't put this part in here yet, but okay. So justification for final answer. So you're going to tell me, is your final answer the same? This should be you. Is your final answer the same as what you had, or did it change, and why? Okay, so that's the first part of this, the first big part of this. Now, we go over here to your blank template. So that's number 1. Okay, and then we go over to blank template. So number 2, and then this is number 3. So 3 things here, 3 things that you're doing. So after you put in, so the only thing I didn't have is the justification, but so just imagine that there's a justification right here. So 2, you're going to tell me the top 3 sources that you should use for these. So the top 3 sources where you got all your information from. Going forward, after looking at your teammates and your work, what would be the top 3 sources that gave you the information in this chart? I want the URLs. They should be URLs, so there's the hint there. And less phone numbers because you called somebody. The next thing I want news articles justifying your top 2 hazards. So, meaning, you have this final answer here. You give me a top event, top hazard, and the next event or next hazard. And you filled this in. So you're telling me that these are the top 2 things that this city should be worried about. Now, I want you to find news articles that discuss and justify, and they should be obviously local news articles. Denver has a couple newspapers. You should be finding what you think the top event for Denver is. You should provide the link here, and then for each of these, I want some information on it. How does this article that you're telling me has this event happen, let's say a drought, how did this drought have issues with preparedness? How did this drought cause issues with human property and business impact? So you should be able to justify these with local news articles. Okay, you guys, this I think is a fun, interesting project. Hope you guys think so too. This is your final project worth 15 points due in a few weeks, close in the semester. Please call me if you have questions on Tuesday. Okie doke. Bye bye.